All right, so today we're starting, like I said, a new unit on geometric shapes. All right, so we're going to hit a little bit on geometry in pre-algebra. The way that your curriculum is designed, it kind of scaffolds. So what that means is what I'm teaching you now, you're probably not going to see again until geometry, but you do need that foundation laid now so you're ready for geometry. Now, don't worry about, remembering something 2 years from now and that type of thing. There's a decent amount of review, but you at least need to be exposed to these concepts now, okay? All right, so for our terms, a circle is a set of all points in a plane. Okay, so every point on the outline of a circle that makes up that line, it actually represents a point. It's a series of points that make up the circle. The radius is half the distance from the center to any point on the circle. All right, so that's your radius. Diameter is the full distance across the circle. And then we've got our formulas. Okay, distance around a circle is circumference. You have two formulas for circumference. The first formula is if you are given the radius as your dimension. Okay, the radius. The second formula is if you're given the diameter as a dimension. Now we're going to talk in a minute, like if there's one formula that you prefer over the other one, it's very easy to calculate radius and diameter and switch between the two of them. Okay? A semicircle is half of a circle. So you guys are going to see semicircles today. And then find formulas to find the radius and the diameter. Here's your formulas for that. Okay? So like I just said, those formulas are going to be matching. Macy, you sit right here in front of me. Those formulas are going to be matching on your next quiz and test, so you don't have to have it memorized completely. And we'll talk about it in a minute. I think it'll help you guys understand what these formulas are. But think about it. If the diameter is the full distance across and radius is half, doesn't it make sense that you can multiply the radius times 2 to get the diameter? Or if you have the diameter, you could divide it by 2 to find the radius. You don't need a formula for that, but that's your formula, but that's something that's pretty easy to do mental math. Find the radius or the diameter. Find the radius or the diameter. So all we're doing right now is, hold on. All right, that seemed a little too easy, but we're going to start with this, okay? So which dimension on the blue circle, which dimension does it give me? Does it give me the radius or does it give me the diameter? Diameter, okay? So you need to know that the diameter, Lily, the diameter is the full distance across the circle, okay? So if you want to find the radius, you can look back up to your formula. We'll use the formula, but remember, radius is just half of the diameter. That's all we're doing. To find the radius, we can take the diameter and divide by 2. So to find our radius, we take the diameter of 20 and we divide it by 2. So what is the radius? 10 feet. 20 divided by 2. Cut it in half. All right, so on the green circle, which dimension am I given? Am I given the radius or the diameter? The radius, okay? So you might even be able to solve this mental math, right? Without using a formula. But in order to find the diameter, I take the radius and I multiply it by 2. I just double it. So to find the diameter, that's 2 times 7. So my diameter is 14 meters. Any questions on how I can switch between radius and diameter? Radius, I multiply by 2 for diameter. Diameter, I divide by 2 to find the radius. All right. Okay, so now let's find circumference. Okay. There are 2 values of pi that you can use. And you're going to hear me talk about this in a minute when we talk about area. You can use the fraction value for pi. Did you guys know that there's a fraction value for pi? Do you guys know that? 22 over 7 is your fraction value for pi. 3.14 is your decimal value for pi. So you say, well, I mean, how do I know when to use the decimal and when to use the fraction? It's all about the dimension that you're given in the problem. If that dimension is divisible by 7, you will want to use the fraction. It'll give you a cleaner answer. So is 5 divisible by 7? Okay, it's not. So I'm going to use the decimal version to find the circumference of my red button. Okay? All right, so circumference. Now I need to figure out which formula do I want to use. Do I want to use my circumference formula that has radius? Or do I want to use the one that has diameter? So which dimension am I given in the red button? Which dimension am I given? I'm given the radius. So let's use our formula for radius. Let's say it together. C equals 2 pi r. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in the values into my formula. Circumference equals 2 times, we said 5 was not divisible by 7, so let's use our decimal, times 3.14, times our radius, which is 5. All right, you guys will be allowed to use your calculators on this part, so if you want to go ahead and get them out and do this math, you can. If you want to try it mental math, what two numbers would be easier to multiply together first? 2 times 5 is 10. And when I multiply any number by 10, all right, so 10 is going to be multiplied by 3.14. What happens to my decimal? It bumps to the right, because 10 is 1 power of 10, bumps to the right 1 place. So when you multiply this, does anybody know what your answer will be? 31.4. All right. So you will be allowed to use your calculators, but those mental math tricks are also really nice as well. I could do that in my head way faster than I could punch it in a calculator. Okay. All right, let's look at the watch now. Okay. Let's look at the dimension that they give us here. All right, first of all, is the dimension the radius or the diameter? Does it give us radius or diameter? Diameter. So let's use our formula for diameter. You can look up above if you need to reference it. All right, let's say our formula together. C equals pi d. Does everybody understand why I use diameter formula? Because it gave me the diameter. Now you say, well, I want to use the radius formula. Could you cut the diameter in half and then use the radius formula? Yeah, you could. Okay, so it does work that way. All right, now, what value would you want to use for pi? Okay, do you want to use your decimal or do you want to use the fraction? What do you guys think? Why would you say the fraction? Yes, 28 is divisible by 7. So watch what's going to happen, all right? So when my dimension is divisible by 7 and I use my fraction, C equals 22 over 7 times 28 over 1, okay? So I can just put the whole number over 1, the diameter over 1. Could I cross reduce 7 and 28? Yeah, so that's where the divisibility helps me, okay? 7 and 28. 28 reduces down to what value? 7 goes into 28 how many times? 4. So 28 reduces to a 4. Could I multiply 22 times 4 in my head? Pretty easily, because you can just multiply each digit times 4. So what's 22 times 4? 88. Circumference equals 88 millimeters. Okay? Circumference. What is circumference again? It's the distance what? Around the object. So what we just found, all right, on the button, we found that the circumference or the distance around this button was 31.4 inches. Okay? I need you guys to understand that, because when we talk about area in a second, and when we throw semicircles into the mix, it can get kind of confusing. All right? You guys with me? Okay, so circumference is the distance around. So now let's talk semicircle. Now we're going to change the wording here. It's not going to say the circumference of the semicircle. It says what? I just highlighted it. It says to find the perimeter. Okay? Circumference, the distance around, means that the entire shape is the curve. Well, on a semicircle, is the entire shape the curve? No. I have a flat side. And technically, okay, so I'm gonna show you something here. Semicircle is half of a circle, right? Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can do this. Nope, it's not gonna let me. If I could just move it. Would you agree that I could simply complete? All right, it's not perfect. But would you agree that I could simply complete it and make a circle? What is 6 meters now? What can you clearly see? What dimension is 6 meters? It's the what? It's the diameter, okay? So when I'm looking at this semicircle, 6 meters, the flat side or the bottom side of the semicircle, that's actually the diameter. All right, does that make sense? Okay, so here we go. I need to find the perimeter. So there is a formula that you can follow, okay, to find the circumference. All right, to find the circumference, to find the perimeter, you're going to find the circumference of the circle as if it were a whole circle, okay? So we just agreed that 6 meters, was that the radius or the diameter? It's the diameter, okay? So here we go. We're going to say circumference equals pi d. But now, because it's only half of the circle, I'm going to then divide it by 2. Okay, because it's only half. All right, so circumference equals, is 6 divisible by 7? No, so I'm going to use 3.14 for my pi value, and I'm going to times it by my diameter, and then I'm going to divide that value by 2. The reason I'm dividing by 2 is because it's only half of the circle. Okay, so go ahead and do that math in your calculators. What's 3.14 times 6 divided by 2? 3.14 times 6 divided by 2. What'd you guys get? 18.4. Did you divide it? You gotta divide it.
9.42.
Okay, so the circumference of the semicircle is 9.42. Okay, now pay attention. Look over here at the figure for a second. That means that I just figured out this part of the perimeter of the semicircle, because I figured the circumference as if it was the whole area around, but then I divided by 2 to find half of it. Okay? But now I'm still missing one piece of the perimeter. Which piece am I missing? Which other side? I need to add the bottom side of it. So now I need to come in and add the diameter to the half of the circumference that I just calculated. All right, so what's 9.42 plus 6? So the perimeter, so I'm going to say P, because P is perimeter, equals 15.42 meters. Okay, so it's the same thing I just did in example 2 to find circumference. But I had to divide by 2. Why did I have to divide by 2? Why did I divide by 2 for circumference? Did I have a whole circle? No, I only had half of a circle. So I divided by 2 to get half of the circumference, and then I added my diameter. Okay? All right, any questions on this? How are you guys doing? All right, we calculated radius, diameter, circumference, and perimeter of a semicircle. You guys doing okay with it? All right, so let's move on to example 4. All right, we got to be careful on the information it gives us here. It says the circumference of a roll of caution tape decreases 10.5 inches after a firefighter uses some. What is the radius of the roll after the firefighter used the tape? Okay, so there's some key information here that I need to know to set up my equation. The first question is, what equation am I going to use? What equation am I going to use? It gives me circumference, right? So I'm going to use one of my circumference formulas, right? Which circumference formula would I want to use? Read the problem. Would you use the circumference formula with radius? Or would you use the one with diameter? What do you guys think? Read the problem. Read that last sentence. The radius. Because it asked me for radius. If I use diameter, I'm going to have to do an extra step and divide by 2. Okay? So let's use our formula. Our circumference formula that includes radius. Circumference equals 2 pi r. But now the information that I'm given is a little different. Okay? What information does it give me here in my picture? Is that my circumference or my radius? It says C equals. That's my circumference. But that's before the firefighter used some. So how could I figure out how much is left after he used 10.5 inches? How could I figure that out? What do you guys think? Subtract, right? 31.4 minus 10.5 will tell me how much of the circumference is left after he used it. All right, so do that math. Go ahead and do it. What's 31.4 minus 10.5? What is it, guys? 20 point what? 20.9. Where would I plug that number into my formula? Would I plug it in for C or would I plug it in for R? What does it say? Does it say R equals? It says C equals. So my circumference after he used some was 20.9. They want to know what my radius is after he used some. So here we go. All right, actually I can plug in 3.14 here. I don't need to write an extra step. So 2 times 3.14 times R, which I don't know. Okay? So what do you guys think I can do next? I need to solve for R, so now I'm solving an equation. What do you guys think? Can I simplify this right here? 2 times 3.14? All right, what's 2 times 3.14? No calculators. Double each digit. What's 2 times 3.14? 6.28. 20.9 equals 6.28 R. Now I have one more step to find my radius. What do I do? Divide by 6.28. Okay? Now, this is just, it's going to take practice. All right, today's Wednesday, so there's no homework tonight. On your homework for tomorrow, there's a couple of these problems on your homework tomorrow. Okay? So R is approximately what? What's 20.9 divided by 6.28? Just round it to the nearest tenth. All right, so R is approximately 3.3 inches. That's the radius after he used some of it, all right? If it had said before he used some, then I would have used the original circumference value. All right, any questions on that? Okay, so we're going to shift gears and we're going to include area in this lesson. So we found circumference of a circle and a semicircle. Circumference is like perimeter, it's the distance around. Now we're going to find area. Okay, so this is, like I just said, it's a really short section, so that's why we kind of include it in one day. All right, there's only 3 slides here. All right, and area complements with circumference, right? When we find perimeter and area of a figure, those two kind of go hand in hand. That's what we're doing with circles, okay? We just call the perimeter circumference. All right, so what is the formula for area of a circle? A equals pi r squared. A equals pi r squared. Okay, so just real straightforward, the formula. A equals pi r squared. So that's what I'm going to use here. Find the area. But it gives me 2 options for pi. How do I know which option I should use, the decimal or the fraction? How do I know? Y'all tell me.
Use the fraction if it's divisible by 7.
Okay, if it's divisible by 7. So is the first value divisible by 7? Yes, it is. So I'm going to use the fraction value for pi. So here we go. A equals, instead of, no, let's just write the formula pi r squared. So A equals 22 over 7. That's the value I'm going to use for pi. Times 7 squared. Okay? Now, I'm going to let you guys do this part in your head. What is 7 squared? What's 7 squared? What's 7 times 7? 49. You can go ahead and just write 49. Okay? You can do that part in your head. Okay? 7 squared is 49. So now, because I have a fraction, I want to look to cross reduce. Can I cross reduce 7 and 49? Yeah, I can. How many times does 7 go into 49? 7 times. Okay? So now, what is 22 times 7? Yep, 154 centimeters squared. We always square the unit for area because area is the distance or the amount of space inside the figure. All right, any questions, guys? So for the next several sections, it's all about knowing how to substitute the numbers into a formula because all we're using here are just tons of different formulas. All right? There's a tricky part to the next one. Okay? Let's go ahead and write our formula. Let's see if anybody can catch it. What's the formula to find area of a circle? Let's say it together. A equals pi r squared. Does anybody see something, Sebastian? They gave me the diameter. Can I plug in diameter here? I can't, all right? So number one mistake that I see in these types of problems is I see kids plug in 26 for R. But 26 is not the radius value. What is the radius value? 13. You have to divide it by 2. You have to cut it in half to find only half. Half is 13, okay? So area equals, would I use the decimal value for pi or the fraction value? The decimal, because 26 is not divisible by 7. So 3.14. Now, then you're going to square 13. Okay, so 13 squared. What is 13 times 13? Okay, so A equals 3.14 times 169. All right, you don't necessarily have to write that step. You could do that part in your calculator. I just want to show you like exactly how it breaks down. So what's 3.14 times 169? What is it, guys?
530
All right, 530.6. So we had to round it?
No, not necessarily.
0.6. What comes after the 6?
6. But that's it.
So it just keeps on going, 0.6. Because usually the 0.6 repeats. Okay, that's okay. All right, so 0.6 inches squared. All right. So you're saying that the 7 came after the 6?
No, it's just 6.
All right, but it needs to round up then. 530.7. If we're going to cut it off. Inches squared. All right, any questions on area? Any questions? All right, so we covered perimeter, circumference, we covered area of a circle. Now let's talk area of a semicircle. Remember, a semicircle is half of a circle. Now this is going to look pretty, oh, okay, that's just embarrassing. All right, let me try this one more time. Okay, that's so bad. But does it give you a visual? A little bit of a visual? Okay, a semicircle is half of a circle. So it makes sense to find the area as if it was a whole circle. Then you will simply divide by 2 at the end to find the area of a semicircle, half of the circle. Okay? All right, one thing you need to be able to recognize though, this number 30 here, is that the radius or the diameter? Imagine if it was a whole circle. That's the diameter. That's the entire distance across the circle. Again, if I were to make an attempt to finish the circle, that's really bad. Okay, but you can see the point there. All right, so here we go. Area equals pi r squared. All right, is it divisible by 7? Nope. It's not divisible by 7. Even when I cut it in half, it's not going to be divisible by 7. So A equals, what value do I use for pi? 3.14 times what is my radius? 15. You have to cut the diameter in half. So 15 squared. Okay? You must square the radius. All right, don't make this mistake, guys. You do not multiply first. That's not order of operations. What's 15 times 15? 225. What's 225 times 3.14? 0.57? 706.5 feet squared. Okay? All right, any questions there? So one mistake I see kids plugging in the diameter value when it should be radius, and then they would square 30. All right, so don't do that. But this is not my answer. This is the area if it was an entire circle. Was it an entire circle? No. So what do I need to do? Divide by 2. Okay? So the area of my semicircle is what? What's the area of my semicircle? Yep. 353.25 feet squared. All right. So I literally do the exact same thing I just did to find area, but then I just divide by 2 to find my semicircle. All right. Any questions on this? All right. So on your next quiz, if I tell you, find the perimeter and the area of a semicircle, okay? You have the tools to do that. Now, we got to do some more practice, okay? But that's how you do it. All right. Any questions? You guys feel good about it? Probably good, not great, right? It's just a lot of information, so we just need to practice more. But we've got to get through kind of the weeds a little bit and get through these formulas, and then we can get to the practice. All right, one more problem. A tsunami warning siren can be heard up to 2.5 miles away in all directions. From how many square miles can the siren be heard? Okay, so it can be heard 2.5 miles away in all directions. Okay, so that means if I were to draw a circle, okay, and at the center of that circle, okay, that's the siren. If it can be heard 2.5 miles in every direction, all right, then 2.5 is my radius. Okay? 2.5 is my radius, because it doesn't matter what direction that siren noise is going, whether it's north, east, west, okay? It can be heard 2.5 miles from the siren. So, how many square miles? That is what tells me I'm finding the area. How many square miles inside basically this siren range? How many square miles can the siren be heard? All right. So area equals pi r squared. Okay. Area equals, will I use the decimal version of pi or will I use the fraction version of pi? What do you guys think? Decimal. 2.5 is not divisible by 7. So 3.14 times 2.5 squared. All right, I want you guys to try to finish this one before I tell you the answer. Okay, you have to decide, do you multiply first or do you do your exponent first? Okay, so go ahead and try to finish this. All right, so what's 2.5 times 2.5? Yep, 6.25. All right, and then what's 3.14 times 6.25? A equals what? What'd you get, Sebastian? 19.625. And it's square miles. Square miles. All right. So that covers a pretty good distance, right? 19 square miles. 19 miles, okay, total. All right. Okay, so any questions on that? Any questions? Like I said, we'll get some more practice in before you guys have a quiz next week over this. But for now, that's everything you need to know on circles.